Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Saratoga podcast. Um, hey, Adam.
How are you?
Well, let me just quickly apologize for the least professional looking podcast situation ever. I am on vacation with my family, and I just ran off the beach to do this podcast, so I look like a drowned rat. I apologize. For anyone who's not watching live, I strongly encourage you go over to Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and then you can watch audio, or you can just listen to audio only. But for the time being, here we are.
Here we are. Yes.
Here we are. We're missing Dan today, but he will be back with us soon. And I know we have a lot to talk about, Adam, including last night's city council meeting. There's actually been like a lot of stuff bubbling up over the last couple of days.
Yeah. There has been. The city council meeting got a little heated yesterday. But let's start with the fun part, and it began with a presentation from Saratoga Shredders, which is a not-for-profit group that aims to promote bicycle riding in the city, which is everybody can agree is a great cause.
For kids, right?
For kids, yeah. I think for kids and an adult. So the latest thing, what they want to do is they want to build a what they were kept on calling it a pump park, but it's kind of a bicycle park on Weibel Ave, where the hockey rinks are now, where the city already owns land there, and they were touting it as kind of a world-class park that would attract national Red Bull events. So I thought it was pretty neat. Yeah. I know those. I mean, we, like I've said in the show before, are in the hospitality business. We have a hotel in town, so people coming to the city tend to benefit us. I know those ice rinks have brought in people. I had a cousin from Chicago who one time came to speed skate there and for a tournament. So these attractions, and this was the point they were making, do bring in tourists. There's a price tag though, and I think the original price tag was $400,000 to be bonded out by the city for a capital budget. So
wait, that actually somehow doesn't seem like I don't mean to interrupt you. Maybe that doesn't seem like a whole lot for something that could attract like a tour. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think that was the starting ask, right? So I don't think that was the final number, but that was the starting number. So anyway, it was really neat. Robin, what do you call that? If you give a presentation in front of the city council, it's not. This was done before public comment. What is that called?
So they're actually just called presentations.
Okay.
And they're listed on the agenda on the upper right-hand corner, and they do happen before public comment. Sometimes they can be a little bit lengthy.
Yeah, that's where I was going. Where the presentations, they should somehow rein them in, because the gentleman whose company is or would be installing this bicycle park, he went through every obstacle and every piece of machinery and every bump and curve on this very extensive bike park. But it's to the tune of 20-25 minutes. That really, when you're starting at 7:00 and then you have that, and then you have public comment meeting, it can cause the city council meeting to go late. So I'd like to see some kind of cap on presentations of, all right, listen, this is the condensed, concise version of what we're asking for, and this is where you find out more. But besides that, it's a neat project, expensive but neat.
I feel like a presentation honestly should be limited to 15 minutes, and there shouldn't be more than 2 at a city council meeting. I also always felt that way, because public safety comes last on the agenda. So by the time, I think it was 9:45 when I logged on and saw that the meeting was still going on last night and they were on the public safety agenda. And so at that point, everyone's tuned out. And so you'd always be like, damn it. So yeah. And I did see that the presentation by the person who was describing this bike park was very long and very detailed. But man, it looks really cool. It looks like it would just be another layer on top of all the layers of amazing and exciting stuff we have in Saratoga. So I hope it happens. I think it'd be really neat.
Yeah. Yep. We'll stay tuned.
And how nice to have an idea where we already have a physical location ready to go that the city owns, and we don't have to be hey, but where are we going to put it?
Yeah, I know, right? It checks all the boxes. It's got the parking there. It's easy to get to. It's easy to get to from the highway. So it's a great idea, and I think it'd be a really kind of neat thing in the city to have. So
I totally agree. Well, were there any other presentations, or was it just the one?
no, just the one.
Okay. And so then we moved on to public comment. How was public comment period?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember back. Public comment was it got heated, and it got heated because the city, the senior center that's behind St. Clement's School was proposed to be used by Rise for services to their population, to their clients there, and that kind of got, there was a big headwinds to that. That kind of got pushed down by the previous administration. Well, Rise Services, they need a temporary location to do administrative work, how they called it. So Lindsay Connors, the executive director, she got up, she made a presentation about what this senior center would be used for, and was more what it wouldn't be used for. And she made a big point of saying, Rise does not, does not cater to sex offenders, which somebody else made a comment that there have been sex offenders who have used
used Rise. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say that in the past. Well, continue. Sorry. I'll give my little context in a minute. Go ahead.
Yeah. So essentially what there was Rise saying, we want to use this building for administrative services, and the community saying, listen, we understand that, but it's still too close to the school, and we're still afraid that we're going to have a population that by the geography and the makeup of this population are more prone to antisocial behavior, dangerous behavior. And the comment was made, the people suffering from mental illness are much more likely to have violence conducted against them than they're the ones who perpetrate the violence. It's just
basically a population that doesn't complement a school.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's a lack of trust and understanding between Rise and between the school district. And it all kind of culminated with past mayor and finance commissioner Michael Lenz, who's a father of a student there. We're
talking about Spa Catholic, right?
Spa Catholic, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So not the school. You just said the school district, and I just wanted to clarify it.
Oh, Spa Catholic, yes. Yeah. Putting in actual language in the lease to Rise saying what this cannot be used to provide services to the homeless population. It has to be used for administrative work. And I'll just say real quick, now, Robin, I'm interested in your take.
Yeah.
This is a real litmus test. I think we talk about the trust is I think that the parents have a great argument. This should not be used for services. This New York State law says that a shelter or a dispensary has to be 1,000 feet away from a school, which this is not. So this will, if this is truly just a administrative building, it's that will be one thing. But I don't know. I just got a feeling that and I know Lindsay Connor, I have a lot of respect for Rise. I get the feeling that there's something that this is going to transition into something the school doesn't want.
Well, you know why you probably have that feeling, Adam? Because we went through this whole dance last year because they wanted to use the senior center property for the low barrier, no barrier shelter. And so this whole debate was ignited when that was being proposed for the senior center. And the Spa Catholic parents got together, they mobilized, they formed a group to represent their concerns. And, they went through this whole process, and then the homelessness task force was convened by the previous administration to come up with a location for the no barrier, low barrier shelter, et cetera, et cetera. And so it didn't go anywhere with the senior center property. Now this revised version puts administrative services in the building, but I did catch former Mayor Lenz's comments, and two of the things he was pointing out were that within the description of what they wanted to go at the senior center property, there was the homeless court was one of the things that was mentioned, which obviously involves homeless individuals coming in for a court appearance. And then there was one other functionality that sounded as if it was definitely based on people coming in for a service. And so he was saying he wanted those things explicitly detailed in the lease so they could feel the level of comfort that they need at this point. But for the lease for the senior center to come back with Rise in this kind of different iteration so soon, I mean, I could see why they would be suspicious a little bit, because it's a huge leap to say last year, okay, Rise wants to operate a low barrier, no barrier shelter here. Flash forward this year, actually, we're just going to use it for services, especially when it is a really big property, like it's a very sizable property. And I mean, as much as I know about Rise, I had no idea their administrative needs require that much like square footage. But it is an interesting debate, and I do probably have like a take on it that's not super popular because where I live on Caroline Street between Circular and Henry, we had Code Blue like 4 doors down from us for 3 winters. And I have 4 kids. And when I saw on the news that Code Blue was going there, I kind of freaked out because I was like, what does this mean for, living on the block with my family? Because we're actually the only single family home on the block. Every place else is like multifamily rentals. And so anyway, I met with Shelters of Saratoga at the time, who were the ones doing Code Blue, and talked to the city and got my questions answered and had a degree of comfort moving forward that it would be fine. And for the 3 seasons Code Blue was there was not one incident or problem. It actually turned out to be like a very positive experience for us as a family. The Children's Museum was also directly across the street, which arguably has much younger and littler kids going in and out during what would be school hours, technically, even beyond that. And there were no issues with the Children's Museum at all that I'm aware of for those 3 years. And so I just feel like that experience is very unique to me. And so when I hear what Rise is proposing, I just think that, and I think this was actually also said in public comment, I think that when it comes to our most vulnerable population, which are our unhoused population, we as a community sometimes need to take a little bit of a leap of faith that this could work for the benefit of that population versus the private school population that already has a lot of things built in to their school to keep their kids safe. So I guess I'm glad it's moving forward, but at the same time, clearly there hasn't been enough communication between Rise and Spa Catholic if there's still this level of contention about it.
Yeah, I feel like this kind of just popped up last minute on this agenda. It kind of got pushed through right as Commissioner Golan was about to head out. But I have a different unpopular probably take as you too. But I think that when you say our most vulnerable population, the problem is how do you define what that population is? And the more services Saratoga provides, our population grows, and we are not able to take care of the entire Northeast vulnerable population.
Well, I think you could argue that, though, in that when Dwayne Vaughn was on, he talked about the success rate they have of moving people through their Walworth property into permanent housing. So
yeah, I know, but with all these services we provide, and what we've been told for years now, people just need a home, and once we get them housed, it'll Dwayne Vaughn talked about the spigot. You want more people going into housing than coming in who are unhoused. The spigot ain't working. It is you can see with your eyes walking around town. I mean, there's parts of Congress Park now. I grew up running around Congress Park. I won't let my kids go there. I've had a different experience with Code Blue than you, where the Presbyterian Church by the Bachelor Mansion took in a lot of unhoused people, and we are a Christian organization, and we have a duty to take these people in. Well, the congregates all went home, and there was only one congregate actually who lived in the neighborhood. The rest of them went to their homes, and there were some major issues at night.
Yeah,
there were major times that my family felt unsafe, and rightfully so. We're not people who overreact and say, "Oh, this is an unsafe situation."
No, you're right. There were.
But
I remember.
Yeah. And so my issue is there is no. You can keep on telling us, well, we just have to house people. We just have to offer more services. And my argument is, okay, enough already. What is the exit? What's the exit, or what's the stop plan? How are we going to prevent? And I know I have firsthand knowledge of recently two people coming from Florida because of this extensive services Saratoga has here for that population. So at some point you have to kind of, nobody really wants to see how the sausage is made. And what I mean by that is that it's if it is extremely difficult to set limits for people who are unhoused or people who are hungry or people who need food. But the problem is it has to be structured. It has to be done in a smart way. And you just can't keep on providing services because it's unequitable with our surrounding areas that don't. And you're going to have the flow of this population to your municipality, which in Saratoga we have. And it does, again, as much as you can say, all right, well, this population is more likely to have violence done to them than commit violence to somebody else. I don't feel that way when I walk through certain parts of Congress Park. I'm worried about that population, who's out there drinking openly.
Right. Well, this is where we get like a little bit confused about like vagrants versus like people who are truly struggling with housing insecurity or food insecurity issues. Because I think like you're describing more of like a vagrancy situation, but I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
And I also think like an easy parallel to make is like, all the cities and towns that are on our country's border who have to deal with an influx of migrants and the weight and pressure and strain that puts on their social service systems. It's not something that anyone who's not a border town can really relate to, but it's a similar situation just by virtue of geography. I think the problem is that I look around our county and no one else is really doing anything nearly to the level of what we're offering. And if other communities felt an obligation to, do their part in helping the homeless and the unhoused and the hungry, we wouldn't have people coming to Saratoga Springs because they'd be able to access these services in the areas that they actually live. And I know that's like a wishful thinking scenario, but I mean, to me, that's what needs to happen. We also had someone just comment saying, which is a valid point, who is more vulnerable than a child? And TKM, I understand what you're saying. My point is that when a student is at Spa Catholic, there's obviously several and many safety regulations in place for students at that school, just on a day-to-day level, to make sure their kids are safe as they attend school there. So that was kind of my.
Yeah, there are, but there's also short of there's no. It becomes a physical incident, right? Like, what is there a security guard there?
I guess
I just have to hire a security guard now, because that's the fear, right? The fear is you have somebody who's in an altered mind state who makes some kind of physical gesture, motion, advance towards a child. What are the safety? The parents are going to have to defend them.
Well, I guess, but what are the situations when the child is like just wandering alone outside Spa Catholic?
They're walking home from school.
Oh, well, then then we're just talking about general safety and security as a city, though, right? Because my kids walk around downtown all the time. So
yeah, but there's a reason New York State says you can't have a shelter within 1,000 feet of a school, because there's a high population. You try to push everything out, I guess, and so it's too close to the school, and there's a law that forbids this. And again, the city also specifically passed an agenda item when this was first being proposed, that they agreed with the homeless task force recommendation that no shelter should be built within 1,000 feet of a school. So the city passed that as a resolution. Sorry, we just got another comment here from CCAM. Gym class in the field, when the police are called, kids will have to go back inside, lockdown, etc. So first of all, I feel like this debate that you and I are having proves why this shouldn't have been like a somewhat last minute agenda item at the city council last night, because I know the specifics to the lease weren't put up until yesterday, maybe. And so there's certainly, especially in the middle of August, there certainly wasn't enough time to properly inform the public and have the dialogue that needs to be had, because as like you and I could tell, there's a lot of like nuanced issues that are involved here. And it's going to take a lot to make a parent feel comfortable. And I guess just some of the examples that I was hearing, I thought were like a little bit absurd. Like someone's baseball gets thrown over the fence and then it like comes back with like a bag of fentanyl attached to it. So I think maybe some of the examples I found like a little bit unrealistic, but obviously there's a lot to be concerned about. At the end of the day, however, the city council did vote on this last night. And Adam, tell us how they voted, could you? Yep. So the only vote against this was the mayor, Mayor Safford, who did feel that this should have been more vetted by the public, and the public should have more time with this. And I agree. I think this was pushed through, and why the people pushing this through, I think, are doing it for all the right reasons. It doesn't make this the right decision. I think you need people to be making tough decisions when it comes to how we handle our, as you say, most vulnerable, but our homeless and our vagrant population. And putting them next to a school, or potentially putting them next to the school, is not the best option. It's and putting them in our downtown area is not the best option. I know people say, well, they have to be able to access the services. Well, we have extensive bus lines. You know, we don't have to have these services right in the center of our
city. I think that the first recommendation that the homeless task force made for a property to be used for a shelter is the property out on Lake Avenue, almost at the intersection of Weibel, like just before the Storts.
Right.
Which to me is like a good location. You know, it's accessible to downtown. You're not in a neighborhood. You're not near a school, a place of work, you know, whatever. It's to me, that was a good spot. Just a question though for you. I know Lindsay Connors, I heard her speak at public comment. This is kind of like a point of order, I guess, but I know she spoke once and then the 3-minute time limit was up. So then they let her come back and speak again. So I have two questions for you. One, when she came back to speak again, I did feel that there was kind of she was having a hard time controlling like a little bit of her hostility towards some of the public comments and what was being said. And I think that that's understandable, but also, you know, that kind of comes with the job when you're talking about this population in general. You're always having to clear up misconceptions or misinformation. And so I just thought that was kind of unfortunate that it had kind of gotten to her emotionally so much, clearly. But second of all, I was surprised because as far as I understand it, someone can only go up in public comment one time in the general public comment period. And this kind of led to a little bit of controversy later with former Supervisor Tara Gaston when it came to like public comment, how long people could speak for, or how often they could speak. Am I right? Is this?
Yeah. And boy, this is something interesting. The dynamic of our city council. I say what you want about politics and political parties, and our mayor is a good man, and he is up there trying his best. He's trying to not show favor or fear up there. He's trying to do what's best for the city, and under some very tense situations. And first of all, this idea that every public comment is equal, I think is nonsense. I think I disagree with what Lindsay Connors was trying to do. I like her very much. I like what Rise does, but I disagree with using the senior center to offer services. But she was able. There was a lady speaking before her who was getting cut off by the mayor. This is another issue I have. This idea is you can't talk directly to a commissioner or what a commission. I think in public comment, you should be able to talk directly about what a commissioner does. And it's crazy that, don't direct your comments at one person. Well, if this person, if they're up there and they're making decisions about something, how are you not going to talk about what they're doing and the decision they're making?
I agree. And I think it's equally difficult to enforce that because it is kind of so nebulous. So it's kind of like a lose-lose, and it should just be let people public comment. I mean, we've heard some of the most foul language I've like ever heard in my life at public comment.
Yes.
So that's acceptable. Referring directly about a commissioner, in my opinion, should be acceptable. The mayor has also always given the city council members, the other city council members, an opportunity to respond to public comment at the end of the public comment period. I just wanted to throw this up real quick, though. This is Dina commenting, saying, I spoke at pre-agenda. The lease was put out late the day before. I emailed questions yesterday. Nobody extended the courtesy of answering my questions. They didn't give enough time. I totally agree, Dina. A lease is not an easy thing to go through for just like a regular person, you know? And so in the middle of August to be like waiting for an agenda item, refreshing, seeing that it comes out on a Monday, and then being ready on Tuesday to vote, I don't think that allows for enough time. And also, John Kaufman commented about this in public comment. The pre-agenda and agenda items are uploaded on Friday. That's when they're due. And so the agenda is supposed to be published by like close of business on Friday, which allows for people to have enough time by Tuesday to, you know, research or see what's going to be on the agenda and formulate their public comment. We've got another comment here. this council put the public, Rise, Saratoga Central Catholic alike in a tough position. This is a sensitive matter and deserve more attention, time, and transparency. Yeah, I think those are all sentiments I agree with as well, for sure.
But yeah. Getting back to the talking about how this was pushed through, and I think we can all agree it was pushed through. But the mayor allowing one lady got cut off, so he gave her 10 extra seconds, and it's people need to act like adults at city council meeting. I don't know. You had ex-Commissioner Gatson there, cosplaying a civil rights leader by standing up there and refusing to sit down because
what was that?
10 extra seconds. It was just awkward, and I don't know what she was trying to accomplish. The point being,
that's what it was. It was that someone got 10 extra seconds, not that Lindsay got to speak twice.
I don't know. I don't know and it wasn't really defined. And that's what kind of drives me a little nuts too, is because clearly Lindsay Vaughn, the director of Rise,
Lindsay Connors,
should be able to say what she has to say about it. Whatever the form is, we need to hear from her about this. It's vital to understanding what's happening right there. And so to say that she should get the same amount of time as somebody who's kind of going on a incoherent, I don't know, not making much sense is ridiculous. So the mayor's up there just trying to do his best to hear from everybody in a fair way without showing fear or favor. And then for people to just start making these big deals about and not sitting down because somebody else got 10 extra seconds, or the director of the homeless shelter who wants to put in another administrative building right downtown, we should be able to hear from her for a little longer. So it bothers me that you have grown adults out there throwing fits, trying to make these, make these points that are just ridiculous. Just sit down. Let the mayor run the meeting. It might get a little bumpy. It does get, there is a lot of tension in the room sometimes, but let the mayor do what he's doing. Unless he does something egregious, just shut up.
I think given the controversy that came up when this was being proposed by Rise to be a shelter, obviously the city council, anyone could have foreseen that this was going to be a bit of a controversial item to vote on. And why they didn't have Lindsay do a presentation, much like they did the elaborate presentation for the bike park, I don't know. Because it seems like if Lindsay had given a presentation before public comment period had started, she would have been able to correct some of the things she wanted to correct. The council members would have had time to ask questions, and maybe there would have been a better understanding by the public of what was going to happen. This seems like basically everybody's walking away unhappy, even though Rise is going to be able to move forward with putting their administrative services there.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be on a temporary basis. And all I would say to the people out there, and the nobody pays attention to local politics until it affects them, and sooner or later it's going to. So stay involved, stay active, and remember what's important to you. So because that's too many people in the city are comfortable and go home and don't vote, don't pay attention, don't act, and we get sometimes people that I disagree with as representing us and making decisions that I would disagree with.
Well, and you don't have to go to every city council meeting and pay attention to this level, because Adam and I will do that for you and just serve it up every Wednesday. So it seemed to me also that Commissioner Songvi was trying to make a point during all this that Mayor Stafford was allowing people who were supporters of his or who were who shared his party, who were Republicans maybe, who were politically favorable to him, allowing them to speak more, giving them more time, and cutting off other voices. And was that what she was expressing?
Yeah, she was, and again, in a very disingenuous way. It was pure politics. Trying to frame the mayor. The mayor gave Lindsay Connors an extra turn speaking, an extra 3 minutes essentially to speak. Somebody he disagreed with, who he was voting against. So she did one lady go over 10 seconds? Sure, but Commissioner Gatson stayed up there for 2 minutes refusing to leave. Who's a Democrat. So again, it's like gaslighting the public. What Commissioner Songvi was doing was really disingenuous and cringy, almost, in a way of trying to frame the mayor as playing politics. It was not his intention. It was his intention to hear from the people who was important to hear from.
You know what it felt like to me? I think the reason it felt a little disingenuous was just because it came a little bit out of left field for some of us. Like it it wasn't something that was on our radar as something that was bothering maybe the other council members that Mayor Safford might be doing. And so it was a very strong sentiment that seemed to come out of a little bit of left field last night. I wasn't prepared for the level of kind of acrimony. And I also, former Supervisor Tara Gaston, I think sometimes, you know, people, especially people who are politicians, sense they might be having a moment and just decide to run with it because they think that it could create some ripples. And, you know, I don't think it's super productive. I don't think it's a very productive way to address this issue. I don't think it's a productive way to resolve issues. What I heard was the end of her kind of standing, and she was just saying, Mayor Safford was getting a little worked up himself. I don't think I've ever heard him this angry. He was saying, you need to sit down and leave, stop talking and leave. And he was pissed. He was like, stop talking or leave. Those are your options. And he just kept repeating that. And former Supervisor Gaston just kept saying, like, no, I'm not going to. Like, what are you going to do now? Basically, like, nope, I won't. I'm not going to go. And then she mentioned that she was going to be letting the Attorney General's office know, and so on and so forth.
What that in turn, that's what I don't get. Right? It's like she's not. It's not like she's solving integrating our schools, and she's making a stand to our schools are integrated, or there's no great cause between making that scene, right? Did he give somebody 10 extra seconds or an extra minute or something? Maybe, but any of that is him just trying to run the meeting under difficult circumstances. And to make a scene like that, again, like you said, what are you trying to accomplish? What unjust actions are you making right? Are you trying to make just? None. It's just making a scene and a spectacle that was not needed.
And the reason that the one public commenter got an extra 10 seconds, as I understood it, listening to it like kind of late last night, was that she was mentioning Commissioner Moran specifically in a very negative way in her public comment. And so Commissioner Moran was like, hey, I thought per your rules, Mayor Safford, people weren't supposed to attack us individually. This woman is attacking me individually. Like, are you going to do anything about it? And he kind of was speaking over her during public comment. So she was like, I want the clock stopped because I'm trying to get this out and the commissioner's talking over me. So those 10 seconds were kind of like giving her the 10 seconds back that had been taken by a little bit of crosstalk between Commissioner Moran and the mayor.
Yeah, exactly right. It's exactly right. And that goes back to that's why I don't, when she was talking critically of Commissioner Moran. But again, as an elected official, it's one thing, we've seen this, and we see this with the previous administration, where BLM will go up there and just say the most disgusting, vile, personal attacks against somebody, talking about their family. That I agree with. That is not productive. That should not be part of the city council meeting. But going up there, being critical of something that a council member has done in their official capacity, of course that should be allowed in public comment. That's what public comment's for. You can't be so general as to talk about items that every commissioner and mayor has had their hands in. No, sometimes you want to talk about a specific commissioner and something they've done or what they're doing, and you have to have that freedom to do it. Again, so long as it's in their official capacity.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I actually think that's a somewhat easy line to delineate and to follow, if you're the mayor, to make kind of referee it that way. When it goes beyond what the duties of the city council members are in their professional capacity, it should be shut down. But I don't know if that jives with New York State and their and their rules. And I don't know. But Commissioner Cole has talked about this in the past. And it seems like this administration has been pretty good about this, about going to the AG's office to check on a policy that they're putting together to make sure it's kind of like approved and like looks good to the AG's office before putting it in place. So maybe this is another time where they seek out that opinion before, Tara Gaston gets on the phone and has the communication coming the other way around.
Yeah.
So what else did I miss?
That was all the major items I saw at City Council. You went a little deeper in the meeting than I did. Is that anything else?
So I'm trying to think. I know one public comment that I actually wanted to talk about really quick was Dave Buchan, who's the chair of the Conservative Party, spoke, and he spoke really beautifully about Commissioner Golub, because it was Commissioner Golub's last meeting. As we've talked about on this podcast before, Commissioner Golub accepted an appointment by the governor to be the general counsel for the Department of Corrections, so he's leaving his seat, which is actually something I want to talk about after this, some of the about who's going to replace it. Mm-hmm. But I guess what I just wanted to point out was, I know Otis Maxwell, who's the chair of the city Democratic Committee, came, I think, at the last council meeting to thank Jason for his service. But aside from that, there's been nothing from the Democratic City Committee members, going up to say that they appreciated him or were supportive of his time in office or were thankful for what he had done in office. And then ironically, you have actually the Conservative Party chair coming up and articulating some of Jason's accomplishments, which really start with the Police Reform Task Force, which was Executive Order 203 from the governor back in late 2020, 2021. And just the way Dave articulated Jason's body of work and the things that he could leave being proud of that will, eternally be present within the city, whether it was a policy item or whether it was like a physical project that he did. It was just really sincere, and it really struck all the right notes, I thought. But it just put in contrast the lack of articulated support that we've heard from the city Democrats talking about a Democrat in office. And but it's felt that way to me this entire time with Jason's candidacy and then resulting time on the council. They've never really shown up for him, in my opinion. Which brings us to my next topic.
Hold on. Let me just comment on that real quick. And I will say, one thing I love about city politics is that the big controversial national politics are, for the most part, 98% not left out, right? We're not going to cover women's reproductive rights. We're not going to cover Second Amendment rights, right? So city politics has the chance and has the ability to be completely nonpartisan.
Yes.
And that's one thing I love about city politics. And that's why things like, and again, I think you see like Manita's attacks on the mayor are just partisan politics. And that's what bothers me about them and makes them cringy to me, is that we really have an opportunity here to listen. We have we have a homelessness population. Let's work together on solutions, right? We can do that as a city. Let's work together and make activities like the bike park for our kids. This should not be partisan politics going on in city politics. And you saw that, I think, the perfect example was the head of the Conservative Party going up to congratulate the first Black commissioner, council member, as he's leaving office. So again, I think that's part of the beauty of local politics and city politics. And I do think the Democrat and the Democratic Party in this city are the ones who kind of radicalize the national politics and use it in ways that are unfavorable for the city. I will say that.
So like when I moved here, it was 2007, 2008, and I started paying attention to politics, and I was completely perplexed because I was like, wait a minute, none of the issues that are of significance to the city seem to be like traditionally Republican or Democratic issues. So I didn't understand why we had partisan elections for the city council when the stuff facing the city seemed so nonpartisan. But topic for another time. But I do also agree that, well, I guess we can talk about it more in the context of the DPW appointee. Do you want to talk about this for a minute?
Yes, sure.
All right. Because it's been a little crazy the last couple of days. So basically the situation is that council member Commissioner Jason Golub would have had to resign his seat before August 5th for there to be an election this November for the city DPW commissioner role. And that's just because that's how much time New York State needs to get the ballots ready and so on and so forth. It doesn't allow for enough time to have a third party line on the ballot, which we know in Saratoga Springs can make or break a candidacy and a campaign. And so the Democratic City Committee was putting a ton of pressure, because I know this because it was not just private, it kind of spilled out into the public, a lot of pressure on Commissioner Golub to resign before August 5th because they wanted to have an election this November, just Republican versus Democrat, which by the registration numbers in Saratoga in previous elections, we know Republican versus Democrat, the best a Republican's ever going to get in Saratoga Springs is about 45% of the vote. So if you're just doing a head-to-head Republican line versus Democratic line in Saratoga Springs in 2024, it's pretty much a shoo-in for the Democrat. So they were putting a ton of pressure on Commissioner Golub to resign before August 5th so they could run the candidate of their choice, who is Sarah Berger. The Republicans, it's my understanding, have coalesced around Chuck Marshall as a candidate were there to be an election this November. But at the end of the day, Commissioner Golub did not resign on August 5th. I believe he intends to resign on August 16th, which is the original date he informed the public and the city council he would be leaving, as he starts his job on August 18th with New York State. So because he did not resign, this then allows the council to appoint someone to this position through the end of the year. And that appointment process would likely go the way it went when Commissioner Golub was initially appointed, where each city council member appoints someone to a committee. The committee interviews anyone who's interested in being the DPW appointee. They make a recommendation to the city council, and then the majority vote of the city council decides who will be appointed to the Commissioner of Public Works. And that, in theory, should allow for the partisanship to kind of be put aside for a bit, and really allow for there to be a thorough vetting and interviewing of candidates, all of which is like live streamed publicly, so the public can watch and weigh in when the city council votes, and you have a committee making a recommendation to the council versus having this kind of head-to-head Republican versus Democrat election in November. So because Commissioner Golub didn't resign, I know there were some upset people on the Democratic City Committee side. I don't know how the Republican committee was feeling about it, but if they had any awareness of how they do in campaigns without a third party line, they should not have wanted him to resign on August 5th. So it was just kind of an it's an interesting situation and very unique to our form of government in this kind of like weirdo situation we found ourselves in. By the way, I just want to throw up this comment from Bill. Bill was, I think he meant to write exactly what I said last night, which is Bill comes to public comment somewhat frequently. He commented last night that he was really disappointed with some of the partisanship that he was hearing and thought that the best thing for the city council and for the city was for partisan politics to be put aside and for a candidate for DPW to be appointed who is just the most capable and best for that department and for the city. Sorry, that was a long-winded talk, Adam.
Yeah, well, you laid out what's happening right now in our city council, and it's a big appointment. And like we talked about, you have two Democrats, and then you have the mayor who's Republican, and you have the Commissioner of Public Safety who ran on the Republican line. So you're going to have a tough vote getting at. It's going to be 2-2. You're going to somebody's going to have to break ranks to get a DWP appointee, a DPW appointee. The Democrats, I think, did do a good job of formalizing a process to come up with somebody who they were. Is nominating the right word?
Well, they endorsing? Were. So the Democratic City Committee put out a press release basically saying that if anyone was interested in this position, that they should send their resumes or whatnot to the Democratic City Committee, who then interviewed only Democrats and then I guess came up with their recommendation as a committee.
You're right. But what they did is they put forward a lady who she's an attorney. She actually does some work for us, so I know her personally.
Oh, disclosure.
Yeah, disclosure. Exactly. Named Sarah Berger. Sarah in the past has been the city attorney. She's been the head of the Democratic Party here. For a very brief time, she ran against me as Commissioner of Finance before they remember that before they swapped out. Really, yeah. We need to shame me. I like Sarah. I think the Republicans, I would be tough to say they should give an inch on this and put somebody in who's been head of the Democratic Party before. But I will say I've seen Sarah make decisions not based on city over party, to steal the one Saratoga line.
I think based on city over party, or
not
based on? Wait, not based on city over party, or based on
city
over
party? Based on city over party. I've seen her essentially be her own woman before, make decisions that went against what the party thought or the party line. So I think they could have, I guess, put up a much worse candidate, a much more partisan candidate, a much more radical candidate. I like her in that sense as a Democratic candidate.
I think what you're saying is that she's more of a moderate Democrat than someone who would be like called a progressive in that party.
She's more of a moderate than total progressive, but she's also, and we saw this with Commissioner Golub, right? Commissioner Golub, we gave him a lot of credit for being his own man up there and making his decisions that he thought was best for the city, not necessarily going along with we've always seen Manita and Dylan in lockstep with the Democratic Party. Commissioner Golub, we would see him make decisions he thought were best for the city. I think Sarah would do that. But again, I don't know that the Republicans should put somebody up there who was head of the Democratic Party. I mean, they should use this chance to leverage it to get somebody who is a true moderate, true independent. So we'll see what happens if they do put Sarah, if she does get that appointed to that position. I wouldn't be upset.
I just found it to be a little bit random because I don't know. Like, I guess I'm not understanding what specifically appeals to Sarah about DPW, or why she feels she would be a good fit for managing that department. It is the second largest department in the city. And it's very, unique in terms of what they do and the supervision of that. Jason Golub didn't have like specific DPW background by any stretch, but he was kind of able to articulate why his background and leadership skills would work for that department. Obviously, I haven't had an opportunity to hear from Sarah, but I guess it doesn't feel like a natural fit to me. I don't know why, but again, maybe I would change my mind if I spoke to Sarah. At the end of the day, I have heard some other names floated around who have no party affiliation, who I think would be great for the council to consider. So I hope they do go through this process of putting together the committee and letting anyone come and interview and letting the public see that, and then making a choice. Because I do think there's an opportunity for a consensus candidate to come through. And so, yeah, we shall see. We shall see. But there's also lots of other kind of like rumors being bandied about that perhaps the accounts commissioner could set a special election, or maybe, we would have a special election via New York State this winter. Lots of different things being floated. We will keep you guys posted in terms of what we're hearing. But for right now, Jason is still in office. He did not resign. So it looks like there will not be anything happening the first Tuesday in November as it pertains to this position. Was there, I know what, Adam, there's one other thing pertaining to short-term rentals that I was kind of like a little bit confused about, but essentially, I guess we had in the city code or language that like you could be punished by like jail time for violating the requirements for short-term renting in the city. And so the city council like removed that piece of language about like the possibility of imprisonment if you violate the city law about short-term rentals. But in doing so, because there were some questions on the council, like, why are we doing this? What's the purpose of this? And the way it was explained was actually the purpose of this would make it easier to kind of prosecute people who are violating our city code as it pertains to short-term rentals.
Right. Yeah. Commissioner Cole has shown he's very meticulous when it comes with his law enforcement background about how the law is written and how following the law to the absolute letter. And so the way some of the enforcement for violations of our short-term rental laws would be either a fine and up to imprisonment. Well, the fact that and up to imprisonment makes it a much more difficult case to bring against somebody because they are facing the possibility of imprisonment. So it sounds like getting rid of it creates a huge bureaucratic process for something that's very rarely, if ever, for a violation, for somebody committing a violation, the idea that they would then go spend jail time is kind of ridiculous. So by taking that potential jail time out of the violation, they're making it much easier to then enforce code infractions against our short-term rental code. And my understanding is they're just kind of cleaning up the books for when they're ready to reveal their short-term rental regulations, that the books are clean and they can enforce the codes they put forth.
Right, because we're still waiting on and because people basically have been asking for the process to be slowed down. We're still waiting on Commissioner Moran to kind of formalize the next step in regulating short-term rentals and the ongoing discussion that's been had about that. But the way you just said it totally makes sense to me now. Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm glad he did that. And Commissioner Cole is always really good at, and obviously it helps that he has this tremendous law enforcement background, but he's super good at articulating the why behind his agenda items, which I always appreciate. Oh, there was one other thing he had on there that I was really glad he had been addressing, which was illegal taxis and like the illegal like ride share people, which is basically, it makes me nervous actually, which is, you know, especially in the summer on Friday and Saturday nights, Uber and Lyft get like really overwhelmed in the evening. You know, they're surge pricing, all that jazz, and they get hit with a lot of requests. So then unlicensed taxi drivers will show up in the Uber and Lyft like pickup spots and just pick people up, but not being licensed by the city just puts people fundamentally at risk, in my opinion. And the last thing I want is like my kid or my friend or my parent, you know, thinking they're taking an Uber or a Lyft or a regulated taxi service that the city works with. You know, we know they have insurance, we know who they are, we have a system in place to make sure you're having the safest experience possible with the taxi. While when, you know, you have these kind of fly by the night people who show up when there's going to be a surge and operate as unlicensed taxis. So the Department of Public Safety is really going to enforce the licensing situation and hammer these folks who are doing it without a license, which I think is just a really good public safety issue in general to be addressing. Not sexy, but effective.
Yeah. I think it was Burlington where there was actually a young lady who came out of a bar, was intoxicated, got into a car she thought was an Uber, and was actually kidnapped and murdered.
Dude,
the driver of that car. And that wasn't exactly what we're talking about, but it was very similar. Getting into a car with somebody, nobody knows who that is. It's zero regulation. And so it's good for them, because you don't want our people getting into cars with absolute strangers.
Especially when we're talking about like the majority of people are like drunk / like hammered at this point, trying to get home and making the safe choice by taking a taxi. Yeah. I thought that was a really good thing. So aside from that, it's going to be really interesting to see how the dynamic of the city council plays out over the next couple of weeks, because we'll have 4 people. And as you said, Adam, we have 2 Democrats and then a Republican and someone who ran on the Republican line, although he's technically a registered Democrat, but they've kind of fallen into a pattern of voting occasionally in blocks, like against each other. And without Jason or Commissioner Golub there won't be like a tiebreaker vote. So if I were on the council right now, I would hesitate to bring any issues of controversy before the council for a vote, because man, don't bring it if you don't have the votes. And this may be a situation where we're at a stalemate on some of these issues for quite some time until someone's appointed.
Yeah, the smartest professor I ever had, I remember, told us about, and he was a finance professor, about the markets, where it's best if you have a split government. You know, you have a Republican House and a Democratic president, or vice versa, because government doing nothing is the best stuff that government can do. So I'm actually kind of excited for government doing nothing, that the people, you know, we have the systems in place, nothing happens going forward, and people, adult, and we move forward to the city. But we'll see. I have a feeling this is going to be a long, drawn out process. I have that feeling that they're not going to be able to come to a consensus on anybody.
I will say, like, the one thing about our commission form of government that I used to feel like kind of secure about was that even if there was like a horrendous group of people elected, the commission form of government really doesn't allow for a lot to happen easily. And so it's hard to make big changes. But I was totally proven wrong by the previous administration, who did manage to just like upend everything despite our commission form of government. So, when people whine about it not being effective, I'm kind of like, well, actually, if you look at the previous administration and how much damage they did in like the first 6 months, I would argue that point. And if you have a group of 5 people who are willing to communicate and step up and really put in the effort to not let the commission form of government silo them, you can actually get a lot done, for better or for worse. Anyway, my friend, we're almost at an hour. We usually do cheers and jeers, but I've been on the beach, so I have not come up with any cheers or jeers this week. So maybe we can save that for our next show.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I'll just add I'll add one little anecdote from last night that I thought was any lifelong Saratogian could appreciate. On the mayor's agenda was an agenda item to accept a donation from, and he kept on saying Den's Flowers, Flowers. And any kid who grew up in this city and played baseball knows it was Dean's Flowers, because I don't know why. Every level I was on, it seemed like Dean's Flowers had a baseball, had a baseball team they were sponsoring, and that team was good. And Commissioner Moran, who grew up here, kind of commented that it's Dean's Flowers. They were already tough at baseball, and it was exactly what I was thinking. So that was a very Saratoga moment for anybody who's played baseball here. Knowing Dean's Flowers, I knew Dean's Flowers well before I actually knew it was an actual shop in Saratoga as a formidable baseball team.
I have to say, it's a rarity, Adam, that you're on the right side of a pronunciation issue.
It is. But this one, yeah. I got a funny story about that too, because I'm off, and my mother, who's an MSNBC liberal, was so upset that Trump couldn't say Kamala's name right, and how he was being, how he was using that to. And my wife Kasha, that's not her Americanized name. Her real name is Katarzyna, and you got to roll an R there a little bit. I said, Mom, say your daughter-in-law's name. And my mother couldn't pronounce her daughter-in-law's name. So it's not always about, I'm not saying how Trump said it was disrespect. I think he was using it in a disrespectful way.
Obviously.
But sometimes people just can't pronounce. Some people have problems with pronunciation. I'm one of them.
Yes. I think in Trump's case, it's basically like the best he can do as an attack is to like intentionally mispronounce someone's name in a way that seems like, sounds stupid. It's really kind of pathetic. But I'm wrapping up with a national politics note, which is that I personally am so jazzed about a Harris-Walz ticket. And if anyone saw Governor Walz last night make his remarks since being selected as vice president, he was really, I thought, fantastic, compelling, and spoke to an America that I really relate to. And so anyway, national politics note.
I think Vice President Harris abandoned the middle. She left the middle there for the Shapiro would have been a much better choice for the middle.
Okay, I think that
Walz Walz by certainly by conservatives and Republicans, but the middle does not see Walz as one of them.
I think that's like a grand sweeping statement that is like factually incorrect. And I think that the polling over the next couple of weeks will tell us how middle America feels about Governor Walz and whether or not they can relate to him.
Yeah.
But I mean, someone who is a public school, teacher.
I think both candidates made horrible decisions in their VP picks, and I think they left the middle wide open, and it's going to be interesting to see.
Adam, I think when you're talking about someone who served in our United States military and then went on to be a career public school teacher, it's hard to argue that person is unrelatable to middle America. I really, his resume is like.
He also stood around by Minneapolis.
Well, oh my God. Can you imagine though? I can't imagine leading through that kind of tragedy and how it unfolded. I mean, my God, that is a very
big problem. I don't think he did lead. I think he let the.
What we're talking about, guys, is George Floyd and how the city of Minneapolis responded and how the leadership responded. In my opinion, that's being in an impossible position. I don't know how you do it. We just had someone comment. It's making me laugh. Smash that like.
Smash that like.
As the YouTubers would say, as the kids would say, smash that like, share, subscribe, but we got a bunch of YouTube subscribers, which is awesome. Yes, tell a friend. We love doing this, guys, and we will be back here next week or next week, or we'll be back in 2 weeks. Yes, we'll be back in 2 weeks. When the summer's over, we'll go back to our weekly schedule. But for now, we're just doing after council meetings. So I'm gonna go back and swim. Adam, you rock.
All right.
Saratoga Springs, you rock. Any
Stay
parting
charming,
comments?
Saratoga.
All right. See you guys.